Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Momenta on the main line. We're your hosts. I'm Dr. Joanna Ilan.
And I'm Dr. Ilan Green. We're here to talk about all things health, wellness, fitness, performance, and overall well-being. Hope you enjoy the show. Hey everybody, Ilan here, and in today's episode, Joanna and I got to sit down with our friend Jessica Brennan. Jessica is a home detox concierge and founder of Clean Product Junkie. She helps moms lower the toxic load in their homes by walking them through how to identify hidden toxins in their household products and find safer alternatives. Most people assume that natural and organic products are safer, but that's not actually always the case, and it's Jessica's mission to guide her clients through the murky and sometimes overwhelming shopping process. With over 8 years of experience in label reading and advocating for more health protective laws in the personal care industry, she is passionate about helping others feel confident in their ability to choose the safest products on the market and create the healthiest home possible. So we hope you enjoy the conversation. We both learned a ton, and we think that it'll really resonate with you. So enjoy. All right, let's dive into it. Jessica Brennan, welcome to the podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
We're so happy to have you.
Thank you both for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so I know we've talked about it and bounced back and forth for probably months about how we need to have you on the podcast. And we've talked about a bunch of topics. So I'm really excited to get into it because I think this is something that our audience is going to resonate with, because I think that there's a major trend right now that people are becoming more aware of the types of products that they're using, both personally and within their homes. And so I'm excited to be able to kind of pick your brain personally about it too.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Jess, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into this journey on clean living and just finding the healthiest products for your family?
Yeah. Okay. So, I started this journey about 8 years ago. I have twin boys who are now 12. So they were 5 years old. And what I had found was I was looking at their personal care, their body wash was the product in particular that I was looking at. And I was kind of like a crunchy mom with my friend group. I was the one that they would call and ask, like, what body wash do you use that's the safest? You know, I cloth diapered my kids and I made their baby food. And I did kind of against the grain type things that a lot of people that had kids my age weren't doing. And so one of those was not buying, the traditional body wash and products, lotions and stuff like that. So at the time I was using both my sons have asthma and my one son has eczema. And at the time I was using a body wash that was specifically formulated for eczema. It was one that my dermatologist had recommended. So I didn't think anything of it, but I had learned that the beauty industry, the personal care industry, which includes kids products, was largely unregulated, which was information I did not know. So I just started questioning it. I was giving him a bath and somebody had told me about this and given me a list of ingredients to look out for. And I was like, I'm fine. Like, I already know what I'm doing. So I flipped the bottle around and I was just totally shocked that there were a few of those ingredients on that list that were linked to health issues in the body wash I was using on my kids. And with all of that stuff, making me feel confident about the purchase I had made, it also had organic, all natural on the front of it. Mm-hmm. And so I just was totally just flabbergasted that there was anything even remotely dangerous in the product. There were ingredients that were linked to asthma, which was obviously a concern because both of my boys have asthma. Mm-hmm. There were ingredients that were known carcinogens, an ingredient linked to hormone disruption, fertility issues down the road. And then an ingredient, which was really shocking to me. I mean, those are obviously very shocking, but there was an ingredient that actually irritated eczema in an eczema formulated body wash. And so I was just like, what in the world is happening? And that just was kind of like the entry point for me to go down this rabbit hole of like really digging into the ingredient list And over time, what I realize is that us as consumers are always looking for these natural organic products, especially right now, like Dr. Green, you were talking about initially. More and more people every day become aware of the safety concerns and a lot of the products that we're using. So we're going down this like green path, but because there's no regulation, companies can say certain things on the front of the bottle. And then when you really dig into the ingredients, those formulas aren't oftentimes much safer than traditional. So what we are considering as safe is possibly a little bit better, but it's not actually safe. And so as I continue to look at my products and swap over to safer, I started to understand that people just didn't know this. And so eventually I started my company, Clean Product Junkie, and decided that I wanted to be a resource for people that were going through this and having these epiphanies like I did initially, and trying to help them find what I consider clean products and not just green products.
Yeah. And so I guess on that kind of topic of recognizing that word choice that they use in advertising and marketing isn't actually what it sounds like. And, contrasted to like the food industry where, people are more aware that natural is not actually like there's not a big definition for that. Right. Can you talk a little bit about what some of those buzzwords are and some of kind of like the truth behind it?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of them are the same in food: green, natural, organic. Specifically organic, there is literally no definition of that term in personal care products. And across the board, like cleaning supplies, I don't just help people with personal care products. I help them find cleaning products, laundry detergents, mattresses, furniture, floor refinishing, like hardwood floor refinishing, like basically anything and everything. Because this really does run across all categories. But yeah, those words in particular are words that we all, associate with safer and healthy. And that doesn't really mean that those products are safe or healthy. They're maybe healthier, but they're not healthy.
In terms of like any organizations or any kind of like is there any certain like body that's actually going above and beyond to be able to highlight some of this stuff, to be able to kind of create some resources to help people navigate the marketplace a bit? Or is it just kind of the Wild West?
I mean, it's both, honestly. Yeah, there are some organizations, thankfully, but ultimately, it's the Wild West, because at the end of the day, unless you know about those, then you're dependent on what the industry is doing. And that's, there's a lot of progress that needs to be made. As far as organizations, I really like and rely a lot on the Environmental Working Group's website. They have a database where you can actually search products, and they give it an overall rating. I typically, with my clients, go through each ingredient because it'll rate the safety of each ingredient. And I always suggest choosing products that have all the ingredients in the product are rated 3 or 4 if you want to go to 4 and below, but anything 5 and over is usually an issue. They list why the numbers are there, like why they rate them that way. Sometimes it'll be a 5 because of allergic, a lot of people can be allergic to it. With that, it's like, you just try it out. And if you don't have a reaction, you're fine. And then they'll give you some idea on contamination concern, which is something that I talk a lot about. There's certain ingredients that are more prone to being contaminated with highly toxic ingredients.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that, in a minute, but it's just like empowering yourself to actually do the research and look at the ingredients. I know it can be very daunting because when you turn these products around, there's usually so many, but that's a really good one. And then when it comes to personal care products, I really love Beauty Counter because they are a beauty brand that takes things and goes beyond clean, which a lot of other companies are starting to create cleaner formulas, which is great. But they really go beyond. They do a lot of advocacy work, and I have partnered with them. So I've participated in that and gone to DC and talked to legislators about changing the laws. they banned 1,800 ingredients instead of the 30 that are banned here in the US.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And
and
I definitely I want to dive into it. I think maybe let's take a step back and just kind of describe like because you're working as a consultant and you work individually with people. So can you tell me like who you're working with and what types of like problems they kind of come to you with, or the motivation behind kind of coming to reach out to you?
yeah, the majority of the people that I work with are moms and particular new moms that that's not specifically, but just kind of generally, that's who I work with. They have had, are pregnant and are starting to really care about what they're going to choose to use on their babies. It's just kind of a new thing for them, and they're thinking about their choices through a different lens. Um, and what I do with them is I help break it down because it can be very overwhelming, no matter, if you're a mom, a new mom, or, where you're coming from as far as wanting to do this work. It can be very overwhelming. So I try to give them, step-by-step guide. I help them break it down. If I'm working with them personally, we go through the products and identify which ones are the most important to switch first. And just kind of make it a little bit easier than just because a lot of times people just want to, once they start to realize this, they get overwhelmed and they just decide, okay, well, I don't have control over this. But the products are out there, the information's out there. It's just up to us as consumers to go out there and decipher it and choose better.
Mhm. Yeah, I know that, and I've felt this personally that, as soon as you learn the extent of the like dirty products and or ingredients in all of your products, it does become very overwhelming to start to slowly make this change. So what's the first step you typically, break it down into? Do you tackle one room like, okay, we're going to clean up the products in the kitchen, or are we just going to eliminate all of our products that have X ingredient? Like what's a good first step for people?
Yeah. So the first step that we usually do is go through the products that you're using that sit on your skin, first and foremost, that you spray. So that's where I would first start. Then, like the cleaning products, so that spraying it in the air and it's hanging out in the air and you're breathing it in. So those are kind of the first two. But across the board, I always recommend avoiding a few different ingredients just to kind of make it simple. These are the top three. And so as you're shopping, if you flip the bottle around and you see any of these three ingredients, then you can put it back and say, okay, we're going to pick another one. So it just kind of makes the process a little bit easier. You can go to the Environmental Working Group's website. They actually have a EWG verified system where you can say shampoos, and it'll give you a list of options that are verified safe by them. And these three ingredients are most of the time not in them. So there's one in particular that I always suggest. And again, this is cleaning supplies, personal care products, laundry detergents, any of the household products you buy is fragrance. So if you could just start shopping fragrance free, then you're going to make a huge difference, not only for the safety of your products, but also this is one that I've been fighting for years to get people to get companies to stop. And there's so many of us. There's like a whole movement of shop fragrance free. And a lot of companies have stopped using fragrance. And so if you are listening to this and you're totally clueless, what fragrance is, obviously it's the smell in the products that you're using. It's what's creating that unique smell. So we oftentimes think of it as perfume, but if you go to the next layer of it, it actually is a catch-all term for a lot of different ingredients that can be included in there. And it was set up for companies to be able to protect their formulas and their signature smells, which is fine. Like, I understand that.
Yeah.
But when it was set up, there wasn't quite as many ingredients that were allowed in it that have been linked to health issues. And now there's a whole slew of them. One in particular is phthalates, and it's actually what's in the fragrance that allows that scent to linger longer. So if you spray on your perfume in the morning, you could still smell it at 11 o'clock at night. It probably has phthalates in it. And there's a lot of evidence and research showing that phthalates is definitely an ingredient you want to avoid. So as long as fragrance is listed on the label, there is a high likelihood that it has phthalates. So number one, shop fragrance free. And then that not only is better for your health, but also sends a message to the industry that you don't have to use this word. There's a lot of companies that don't do it anymore. They list all their ingredients. None of them have had issues with companies stealing their formulas. So it's not, as big of a concern as it used to be because there's so many different ingredients that can be in that fragrance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the whole, like in the supplement industry, there's proprietary blend, right? That's
Right.
kind of like
Yeah.
the
You're like,
equivalent
what
where it's
is
like, okay, so it's a blend of something. And it's just like, oh, well, it's proprietary. We can't tell you what it is. Somebody will steal
right?
it.
And
It's like,
I understand that to some extent, but when so many companies are using it to hide ingredients that
yeah.
are harmful and they're putting so you'll see I see this all the time, labels that list all these natural ingredients and it looks great, and then it says fragrance and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, good for you, but what's in that fragrance? So, just like tell us. And if you are using ingredients that are linked to health issues, then work harder to switch that. There are options out there. Generally, it's just that they want to use those ingredients because they're less expensive. So makes their bottom line, better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also just to highlight too, because I know it's been a challenge for me personally as we've become a little bit more aware of it too, but men's products, it's like,
Mm.
also a big thing. I feel like sometimes when we have this conversation, I think we almost like mentally kind of shift towards like the line of women's products because there are so many more like specific things targeted for that market.
Yeah.
But even like men's, I had difficulty finding like a deodorant, that didn't have like fragrance or like, what is it, like aluminum and stuff like that. And then same thing with like any sort of like soaps or shampoos, trying to find something without fragrance was almost near impossible. Even though the marketing around it has kind of like focused on that natural and like, organic type stuff that you were talking about before too.
Yeah. And men's products are one of the fastest growing segments of the personal care industry.
Yeah.
More and more companies are adding specific lines for men and using the same terms. So it can be challenging for sure.
Yeah. But you have some resources available for people yourself, right? That you've created as far as like guides. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So first of all, I have a free download. It's a label reading guide on my website, cleanproductjunkie.com. Right at the very top, you can sign up for it. And it lists the 2 additional ingredients that you should look out for on your labels. And it actually kind of gives you an action plan. I encourage you to go pick a product up right in the guide, and we go through the ingredients and we look for these. And so that's a really great resource for people just to get started. I also have a 5-day detox online program that I put together. And so I'm a home detox concierge. And so I work one-on-one with people going through their products. And, I hear the same things over and over again, same questions. A lot of people are having the same issues as they're going through this process. So I put together a program to help people kind of go through that process. And that's on my website too.
That's amazing. So when working with you and going through this home detox like process, what does that typically look like? Do you just kind of walk through people's homes and help them answer specific questions they have about products, or do you just kind of do a full sweep?
Yeah, it just depends on what, the person wants. I mostly work one-on-one with people in just like a small capacity as far as they want help with 5 to 7 products. I have them fill out a form beforehand, so we identify which products that they need help with, because sometimes people feel good about certain products or they have products that they just love and they do not want to find anything else for it. So it's just kind of like identifying which ingredient or which product specifically that they want to go through. And then if you work one-on-one with me, you get access to the 5-day detox. So you can kind of get more information about what specifically to look for and then which products you need help with. So yeah, that's one way. And then another way is if somebody's just like, I don't have any desire to learn any of this, I just want to know that I have safe products, I can do that too. I come into people's houses and I just literally do all the heavy lifting for them.
Yeah. And one of the things I appreciate too is it's not just about like replacing it with something that's safe, but it's also something that's like effective and going to do the job well. And so that's something that I've
Right.
noticed from you too. It's like with some of the recommendations that you've made for us, even for, some of like the household cleaners, like they work very well. And it's
Yeah,
a
because I
lot
mean,
better.
at the end of the day, if a product isn't going to work, you're not going to use it, and you're going to be back at square one. So yeah, thanks for highlighting that. Like that's a huge thing for me. I just think there's a lot of products out there that are cleaner and safer, which is great, but they just do not do the job. And so part of what I do is I'm constantly testing things out. Once I clear the safety of it and seeing if it works. And I only recommend products that work.
Yeah. So I know, obviously a huge motivator for being able to be conscious of the types of products that you're using, both like personally and within the home, is for the health benefits, but when I know there are certain key things that people will recognize as like symptoms that identify that maybe they need to make a switch, like skin irritation or something like that. But can you talk a little bit about things that people should kind of be watching out for when using certain products to be able to know that they should make that switch?
Yeah, I mean, you never really know what
Yeah.
is causing those issues, but just from personal experience, and I can talk, to many clients that have experienced improvements in their health. My son's eczema within 4 or 5 months of switching to safer, cleaner products was basically gone, and it hasn't come back. Both of my son's asthma is basically gone, like again within 4 or 5 months of switching to cleaner products. So when you think about it, there's this thing called the cumulative effect, and our body begins to, build up a certain tolerance to toxins because we're being exposed to them so frequently every single day. And then what ends up happening is if there is a malignant cell of some sort, our body doesn't identify it until it's too late a lot of times. So it's our goal to kind of lower that load that our bodies take so that our bodies are able to do the job of identifying these cells as there's, you guys know, very, very common. And so our bodies need to be in that prime health, zone to be able to fight it off. And so if we're, experiencing a lot of breathing issues, a lot of times that can be from laundry detergent. I like to use this as an example. We put the detergent into our laundry or into a washing machine, and then those ingredients fill the air. You can smell it. You use a really fragrant laundry detergent, you can smell it as soon as you walk into the house, right? And then all day long, it's on your clothes. So you're literally breathing in those toxins like all day, every day. And so what that does to your body is, again, it just kind of puts it into this place of like, oh, that those seem normal. So you get that your body gets used to it.
Mhm.
So just eliminating those, generally, people can experience better ability to breathe. Yes, less skin irritation. There's a lot of ingredients linked to both of those. So
Yeah.
generally, just as a society, using far too many of those ingredients.
And then I guess on the topic of society, I know the culture and regulation within the United States is very different than it is elsewhere. And I know you mentioned it earlier too, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk about it because we think it's really cool what you've done in terms of going to advocate for positive change. Can you talk a little bit about your
Yeah.
experience in Washington and that
Yeah.
that whole experience?
Yeah. I mean, that's of all the things I do, which I absolutely love what I do. It's my favorite part of what I do because I get to actually, not just talk the talk, but I get to walk the walk. So in the European Union, they have banned or restricted around 1,400 ingredients. Here in the US, we've only banned 30. And there has not been a major federal law passed in the industry since 1938. So I'm
It's a long
working
time ago.
alongside, yeah, it's just insane when you think about it. Um, I'm working alongside with Beauty Counter, who's leading. I mean, Beauty Counter and a bunch of other companies have kind of joined forces and are really trying to make a difference in the industry. But they just were the first ones that did it, and kind of have been doing more than most companies as far as going and advocating. So basically, we have participated in passing 10 laws, state laws, that have, ultimately helped to better the industry. But what we need is a federal law that's been changed. So in March or May, sorry, the other M month, I was in DC with a bunch of beauty counter consultants, and the we were asking Congress to update what authority the FDA has, because currently they basically have none. So if a product is sitting on the shelf and is causing harm, not necessarily short-term harm. So if somebody uses it and they get sick right away, that is covered, like that can't happen. But if there's ingredients in a product that, let's say, makes somebody's hair fall out over time, or has a high amount of something that can cause breathing issues over a few months, like not necessarily short term, but like definitely is causing issues, there's nothing that can be done. The FDA cannot recall that product. So we were advocating for Congress to give the FDA authority to recall products that shouldn't be sitting on the shelves. Also, we're asking them to include different ingredients to test, which there's tons of research out there, so this shouldn't be too difficult, but it would just give them the authority to, research ingredients and then ban them from being used. So that 30 count that we're currently at could hopefully increase over time. So those were the couple things that we were asking them to focus on. And then the other thing we're asking them to do is ban PFAS, PFAS, which is a ingredient that is like causing all kinds of harm. And, if you're listening to this, definitely research it because it's everywhere. And we're asking Congress to ban that. So they're working on it, which is actually really awesome. Like I said, I've been doing this for 8 years, and my initial conversations with congressmen and women was very different than it is now. They understand the issue. They understand that the FDA does need authority. So that's great. It's just about getting it done. And they're working on it. So hopefully soon, fingers crossed, we'll have at least a little bit. It's going to be a while before it's up to, par with the EU. And, we're going to have to still read our labels for quite a while longer, but progress even on the small scale is better than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know when we talked last too, you mentioned a specific story about meeting with a staffer for senator. Do you mind sharing the story?
Yeah. So yeah, we met with a staffer, and actually we're meeting with all high level staffers, which again is a change from when we first started this. It was like bottom of the barrel staffers at first, and now we're like first or second in command staffers, which is awesome. So anyways, yeah, this specific staffer had just recently discovered or realized that he was more prone to getting skin cancer. And so he was very diligent about using sunscreen. And he was very, very upset to learn of all of the, issues around the industry, the fact that it's unregulated, and that there were actually ingredients linked to cancer in his sunscreens that he was using. And there had been a voluntary recall that a bunch of companies had recently done. And so he was very eager to hear about the work that we were doing, all of the suggestions that we had as far as the legislation, and all that stuff. And he was just, kind of not like an atypical person that would normally be interested in this topic, but he was like, let's get it done. Very excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, it hits a little differently when you're dealing with it personally. And
Yes.
he's
Yeah.
definitely
And
going through that.
unfortunately, a lot more people are starting to deal with it, more directly, especially with voluntary recalls like that. There's been quite a few of those in the last 5 years. And so companies or consumers are starting to really be more aware of it and looking for answers and trying to find those safer products.
Yeah.
And starting to realize it's not that simple.
Yeah. So kind of circling back, I think, people start to care more when they recognize how personally affected they are by it, and so, um, I guess in terms of like the top products that you're seeing people kind of reaching out about, is there anything in particular? I know laundry detergent's probably one of them. Is there anything else that's like kind of like on that top list of things that people kind of make that recognition and they're like, I need help?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the most common is the cleaning supplies and laundry detergent. Personal care is a little more difficult because everybody has different needs. Some people use a few products, some people use a lot. Deodorant is probably the number one product that I get asked about, with, in particular personal care products. But yeah, just kind of like all of it at the end of the day. It's,
Yeah, yeah,
but
fair.
I would say deodorant is definitely on the top of the list
Yeah.
for
And we can, yeah, like you mentioned, I know you have a couple resources on the website that are totally free for people to be able to kind of like download to start that process of learning more about it too. So we'll make sure to link that below too. um yeah, we can transition right into the lightning round, some fun
Yeah,
questions
that
if you're
sounds
ready for
fun.
it. Yeah,
Yep, let's
okay,
do it.
cool. Joe, do you want to start us off here?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. What is the most influential book you've read?
Oh, I like that.
It could be,
Well, late,
it could be recent or, in the
yeah,
past.
yeah. Lately, I've been reading a lot of like business and personal development books.
Yep.
And as an entrepreneur, sometimes it's really hard to stay focused, especially in this digital world.
Mhm.
So recently I read the book. It's not new. It's been around for a while, but Eat That Frog, where
Mm.
the focus is like doing the most difficult thing, like first thing in the morning,
Mhm.
so that the rest of the day is kind of like a piece of cake.
Yeah.
Um, and then just like reading books that really help to encourage like getting over your fears, like doing a podcast for me is a very fearful thing.
Yeah.
Being interviewed and then now hosting one. It's a very um it evokes a lot of fear for a lot of people. And the more we lean into those fears, the better. So I try to read things that really help to encourage that and continually put it on my mind because you have to do it every day.
Right. Yeah. You got to take that risk and take a leap of faith. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, just a shameless little compliment. I think you have a lot of valuable information and helpful resources to be able to put out there, and I think it needs to be put out there. And so, I think conquering that fear is for the benefit of everyone.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
It's an
it's
everyday thing. And, I
yeah,
try to tell myself that because, again, I always like to go back to that person that I was 8 years ago that was totally oblivious and, had no idea. And I would like to say there's a whole lot more resources, and there definitely is, but there's not as many as there should be. And so if I can just at least help one person, do escalate the process, like it took me years to figure all this out. So if I could just help one person, kind of go through the or break through the learning curve a little bit, that
yeah,
I feel
get
good
the
about
ball
that.
rolling. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, cool. Second question: what book are you reading right now?
Currently, I'm reading the 4 Hour Work Week,
Oh
trying,
yeah,
yeah, which is an old one,
Yeah.
but again, like we were talking about the digital, constantly
yeah,
being bombarded by social media and the news and stuff. And so the one thing I'm halfway through it, that I'm taking
okay.
away is like filtering all that out, being focused on the most important things, and then just, you know, making sure that you're not getting bogged down by unnecessary tasks.
Yeah, yeah. I think you read that book, right, Joe?
I just picked it up again last night. I can't believe you even just said
What?
that. How
Oh,
funny
that
is
is
that?
so
Yeah,
funny.
on my Kindle.
It's a
It's
big one.
it's a long one. It's
Yeah.
definitely a long
Well,
one, but it
I
is
listen to
interesting.
audiobooks.
I
So,
see.
I mean, I usually have them in hard copy too, but I just consume the information better. So I'll like listen to it and then I'll go pick the book up and highlight things that I want to
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always find that book is so funny just because I feel like Tim Ferriss is such a savant at getting out of doing things. And it's
Yes,
like,
I know. It's so funny. As I'm listening to him, I'm like, he is so lazy, but
yeah.
also he's so successful. So I
And
should probably take notes of some of this.
Very, very efficient. Yeah.
Yes, very
and
efficient.
yeah, very stubborn in a lot of like the best ways. Like we're big Tim Ferriss fans, but I remember there's a section about all these different responses that you can give to people on like the phone or email to like
I
get
just
them
listened to
to
that
stop talking to
yesterday.
you.
Yeah,
And I was just like, I,
I
I
know.
I thought it was so funny.
And
And
he's
like,
like, don't let people linger at your desk and talk.
yeah, yeah. And it's like so much of it doesn't apply to like, what I, because it's
Today.
like I'm in front of people like all day.
Right.
It's like if
Well,
I
and
were to use
also it
any of
was
those things,
written in
I'd
the
be so
early
rude.
2000s without, now social media is such a part of it. So it's like, I wish he would put out a new version that's like, how do you do that with all of the new stuff,
Right.
and,
Yeah, yeah.
bombarding us every day.
That's funny. Great book. Great book.
Yeah. Okay, next question. If you could have any meal delivered to your door tonight from anywhere in the world, what would
Ooh,
it be?
oh my gosh. Well, I love all foods that have cilantro. All like genres of
Yeah.
food. So I love Mexican food, Thai food, Indian food. So I would have a smorgasbord of all three.
That's so funny because a lot of people don't like cilantro.
I love it. It's funny because I didn't make the connection for a very long time. And I'm like, what is it about these? Because it's whenever it's like, what do you want to get for takeout? Those are the top three. Like, what is the common denominator? And then it occurred to me, it's the cilantro.
That's so funny. I love it.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Last question. If you could go back in time and give advice to a younger version of yourself, what piece of advice would you give?
I would tell her or a younger version of all of us is just to trust your instincts and your gut. I think a lot of times we struggle with that. And for me in particular, when I was starting the journey of cleaner products, I definitely questioned myself because nobody else was really doing this. And I'm like, well, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. But then skip forward 8 years later, it's like, no, it is a big deal. And I'm glad that I listened to my inner voice enough to keep me going. I think that's why it took me so long because I just didn't stick with it consistently at first because I just, had those doubts. So yeah, with anything in life, if you really feel strongly about something, trust that and don't let fear hold you back.
Yeah. That's such a great one. I think following your intuition is just a skill we don't learn how to develop. And at some point in our adult lives, we just, yeah, start downing ourselves.
Yeah.
That's
And I
great.
think it's so difficult because we're always looking outward for reassurance of things. And so, yeah, we're not taught how to listen to our intuition. And then we're constantly looking for answers from other people, which is applicable sometimes, but most of the time, I think we know what we're feeling and we know what the next right step is. We just are sometimes afraid to take that next right step. And so we're looking for reasons not to.
Hmm.
Um, and that's why, I think it's a challenge for so many people.
Yeah. Yeah. Always seeking external validation unnecessarily.
Right. But everybody walks, through life from a different perspective and we see things through a different lens. And that's something that I did not know for a very long time, or I didn't quite understand that. So it's like, yes, you could go to somebody who you respect a lot and ask them a specific question, and they may give you an answer that's totally opposite of what you were feeling. And you're going to listen to them because you respect them. And to not listen to somebody just because, that doesn't mean you don't respect them. It just is acknowledging, okay, well, I'm grateful for your input and take that into consideration. But ultimately, you need to make the best decision for yourself.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of, people looking to be able to work with you or kind of download some of the resources that you mentioned, where can people find you?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram. My handle is at Clean Product Junkie. My website's cleanproductjunkie.com. I have a bunch of resources there. I have a blog on my website. And I have a podcast, a
Yeah.
new
Tell
podcast.
us about the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's called Clean Living Made Easy. And it kind of spawned from my personal desire to just like learn from other people. And so I share a lot of obviously stuff that I have learned along the way, but I bring a lot of people in the health and wellness world, like you both will be on my
Looking
podcast
forward to
soon.
it.
So yeah. And just kind of helping people break down what they need to just make those decisions better, because we do live in a world where there's so much information being thrown at us and we're trying to make health decisions or decisions about the products in our home, and so sometimes it can be very overwhelming. So the podcast really focuses on helping people find the right answers for them, and maybe not a traditional sense.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds great. Cool. And so we'll be sure to link pretty much all of that stuff in the show notes and send it out with this episode. But thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and to be able to pass on some really helpful information.
Yeah, you've answered so many questions that I've had floating around, and I'm also feeling totally inspired to go through all my products and in a non-daunting way. I don't feel overwhelmed after this conversation. It
Yay.
feels like
Oh,
it's in grasp. I can do this. I know where to start. And I thank you for that. I think that's going to be a lot of help for people looking
oh.
to start this journey themselves.
Yeah, and just one last thing before we wrap up,
Yeah, of
just
course.
so everyone knows, these little changes totally matter. And like, I'm glad that I've, been able to share some information that might help you feel a little less overwhelmed by that. But over time, these changes matter and they do add up. And so it is about taking those little steps. So I think that's the biggest thing I want people to take away is just like make the time and effort, even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you guys for having me.